Well folks, check that out for an absolute worldie. Typical stamper fish and the typical looking fish for this place, which is Black Mirror Pool run by RG Fisheries, deep in the Kent countryside. The lake is about 2.5, maybe 3 acres, but it's reasonably low stock, probably only 40 fish in here, most of them hand-picked, and so you have to be very, very crafty, which is absolutely perfect for what we're going to be talking about today, which is short rods on intimate little venues, and why I think they catch you more fish. And that, as they say, is proof in the pudding. Wonderful, well happy with this. Oh, you are an amazing carp. Thank you very much. See you, big girl. Not 20 minutes has gone by since I put that last one back. Got the rod back out on the spot, first chuck. And you know they say it's better to be lucky than good. Well, in this instance, I think it was a bit good, because I think on places like this, 2 or 3 chucks don't do you any favours, and the rod went back out first chuck. And this is actually one of my target fish. It's called the saddleback Lin. Look at that. Well, an absolute worldie. Stay still, darling. It fought like an absolute bruiser, and it's still going. 32 pound. God. Oh, what a worldie. I love this place, and I love this fish. Look at that. Stay still, stay still. Yes. Oh yes. Oh, it'd be boring if it behaved itself, wouldn't it? There you go. So where did my love for short rods come from? Well, to be fair, it's taken an awful long time to actually find a way into my armoury on a regular basis. And it's weird because many moons ago, before 6, 7, 8 foot rods ever became a fashionable item in your tackle bag, I got given a prototype stalking rod. And the first time I used it, I was on a canal. And the only reason I took it to canal, because I thought to myself, with all of the bike traffic and the foot traffic and stuff like that, I'd give myself a lot more room. It was a windy old day, and the only info that I got given on this canal was the closer to the barges you get, the more fish you catch. Now, 2 of these barges were bouncing. Every now and again, you only had sort of like a minute, maybe 90-second window, and these barges would slowly bounce together and they'd separate, and they'd only probably separate 15, 18 inches max. And with a 12-foot rod, I would never have attempted to get a bait down that gap. But with a 10-foot rod at the time, it was so accessible, it was like I was throwing darts. And after that session, I put the rod back away and I never got it out again for a couple of years, and I seriously don't know why. And it's only in the last couple of years when I've started taking a little 9 or a little 10-foot rod as a stalking rod for little sort of creepy holes here and there, that the 12-footers that are generally the best all-round rod you can buy, hands up, I won't disagree with that, but I sort of had a couple of bites on these stalky rods in the edge, and I thought, oh, that's all right, I'll get another one of them. And so 1 rod became 2 rods, 2 rods became 3 rods, and now over the course of probably the last couple of years, on anywhere where I'm not casting more than 50 or 60 yards, or the lake's probably only 3 or 4 acres, I'm using these 3-pound Trakker Propels, and I'm telling you, they've taken over the vast majority of my UK fishing on small venues. They are so accessible, they make you so much more efficient, and by that I mean, if you want to move on a day session, you don't really have to break them down. You can just sling them on top of your barra, and you have no risk, pretty much, of snapping the rod tips. We've all done it, where you've stuck 12-foot rods on top of the barra. You can't be asked to break them down because you're in a rush. You want to be the first person on that showing fish. And you hustle your way around there, and then you end up snapping a tip. We've all done it. You don't need that, you don't get that on 10-foot rods. And on venues like this, where you're not just casting at bushes or trees, you're casting at individual branches on bushes and trees, they are so much more accurate and consistent. And particularly on this swim that I'm fishing now, we are casting underneath a massive canopy of trees, and keeping your trajectory low with 10-foot shorter rods is absolutely perfect. It's so much easier. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it with a 12-footer, But if you liken it to golf, you wouldn't necessarily turn up to a game of golf with your pals and just use a 7-iron all the way round, would you? Because for your short game, you want your wedges, for your long game, you want your drivers, and for your mid game, you want your 7-irons. And that's how I look at my fishing rods. It's no secret, I love punching leads an awful long way, as far as the eye can see if I can. But for that, I don't use my 12 footers because they're just not the right tool. So I've got my 13 footers. For the general all-round stuff, for most of the stuff that I do, when I'm fishing between 60 and 100 yards, I use my 12-foot 3-pounders because they're perfect for the job. But nowadays, these are my little sand irons. These are my little pitching wedges. These little 10-footers, when I'm going to a little venue, enable me to put leads more consistently where I want them without missing a clip or whacking it up a tree or just sending one a little bit left and a little bit right. And I know a lot of that is practice. But when I do my tutorials, the biggest difference I see between most anglers that you see catching 90% of the fish and most anglers that you see struggling to catch the 10% of the fish isn't the bait, it isn't the rig. There are no secrets in them departments. Everyone has their favourites, yes, but generally you'll catch on most baits and most rigs. The difference is the technical side of things. It's actually hitting the clip and making less casts, particularly on venues like this where you've only got a small amount of fish. You know, if you're on fish and they're on your spot, you don't want to be thrashing it to a foam, fly fishing to try and get that lead back on there. If you can do it in one chuck, then you are, over the course of a season, going to catch more fish. There's no two ways about it. And so if you are one of those people that struggles with consistency, my advice would be possibly have a look at some slightly shorter rods, as long as they do the range that you're after. Because even for me at my level, and look, I've not got the best watercraft, I don't use the fanciest rigs, and my bait is very simple. But one thing I do pride myself on is being technically very efficient. You know, if I'm sitting next to someone that can cast further than me, then I go away and practice to make sure that doesn't happen again. And if I sit next to someone that can cast more accurate than me, then again, I go away and practice. And there's no coincidence that some of the best match anglers on the planet, I know they're sitting on seat boxes in tiny little swims, but they use short rods for short chucks. And mainly because they're super accurate, and it's the same thing in carp fishing. And so over the last year, I would honestly say that my favourite rods, which are my 12-foot Propels, have sat in the back of my van or in my garage for the vast majority of my fishing because I've been on small venues, and these 10-footers just do the job better. Look at that angry, chunky little fella. Probably the last one for this film, but definitely not the last one on my new loved 10-footers. And you know what, if you are that person that struggles on small venues for consistency, then it's a contentious issue, isn't it? What works for one person may not work for another, but at least it's a bit of food for thought for you, because it's definitely helped my consistency.